Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is extremely excited to talk about the album Shelley fka D.R.A.M. by Shelley fka D.R.A.M. I chose something of a attention-grabbing title for this video, Is This the Album of the Year, AOTY, because often my videos about soul music are underviewed, so I wanted to kind of draw you in. And the thing that makes this album great is not just that it has the best Daft Punk cover I've ever heard, but because it has every other component that would lead to an album of the year. It is smart, it is thematically interesting, it is funny, it is emotionally intriguing, it is culturally relevant, it sort of reflects the current state of soul music, of R&B, while also moving it forward. Like any great album, it's a cohesive one that has one basic mood, one basic atmosphere, but it also has brilliant moments. You know, like those moments that just, you listen to the whole album and you're excited and you can't wait to hear it. This happens to have one of the best marriages of voice and instruments that I've ever heard, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. An album of the year has to be very well produced. This whole record is so well made and so catchy. And probably, most of all, there needs to be some real standout element. And that standout element is the voice. The voice of Shelley, formerly known as D.R.A.M, as D.R.A.M. I think he has one of the best voice in music right now. It's tender, it's strained. I think of it something as like Bismarcky mixed with Marvin Gaye. And those are two of my favorite musicians of all time. What I mean there's like a kind of a kindness and a sweetness and a funniness that comes from Bismarcky with the sort of sensuous tenderness and skill of Marvin Gaye. There is a roadblock. There's been a roadblock for me to a lot of R&B soul music. A lot of R&B, a lot of soul music. It's just, there's something about it that has made me just like not accept it. And I think a good comparison is with country music, okay? There's like certain country music that people who are not from the South, who are not from sort of country music loving perspective, that they will accept. You know, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, sometimes Hank Williams. They might go as far as maybe Merle Haggard. But you know, there's always like a point where it just gets a little too country. And I think the same thing has kind of happened with R&B and soul music. Now, in the old days, I don't think that's true. You know, Smokey Robinson and Otis and Aretha and Al Green, you know, like music of the 50s and 60s, soul, there's no problem. But in the 70s, there was this change where it seemed to be harder to invest in, harder to accept. I don't know, like when I think of artists like Lou Rawls or Teddy Pendergrass or Luther Vandross, like more slow jams, a little bit more like chimes in the production, a little more fretless bass, a little more saxophone, a lot more sex, a lot slower, but what I saw is more cheesier, perhaps more with an audience of women in mind as opposed to an audience of men, more romantic, definitely not what I wanted. I found myself not being able to follow soul music into that realm. But I've been trying, and I've tried for a long time. You know, I really do, because I love soul music so much. There's a kind of soul music I call Starbucks soul that I also try to avoid, you know, like sort of easy to digest empowerment anthems of all sorts, you know, or sort of like soul music that is very consciously going back to the old days when things were good, at which point it becomes more Americana than real soul music. I've tried over the years to push myself to accept Luther Vandross and Lou Rawls and that kind of music, and with modern music as well. I remember at a certain point in the 90s, I discovered that R. Kelly is amazing. R. Kelly is a true genius of songwriting and performance. I didn't know because, you know, I just heard his hits and just sort of dismissed him. But then when I really paid attention, it was actually because when I was in France, a lot of my students liked him, but they would say, R. Kelly. Like, who? Do you like R. Kelly? And that's actually how I got into R. Kelly. And you know, he writes and plays every single instrument, and he's this great genius, and he has a lot of that feeling of that 70s slow jam, sultry, soul music that just feels like it's not for me. And I don't know if that's based on gender, if that's based on race, that I get that feeling. I don't know what kind of prejudices or biases. I think about them a lot, but I'm not going to draw any conclusions because I think it's reductive. But I was able to learn to love R. Kelly as somebody who I saw as Michael Jackson multiplied by Prince, divided by Gary Glitter. So I can't listen to R. Kelly. I can't do it. It bums me out. I don't like actively supporting terrible sex monsters. So I had this hole in my life of like new soul music that challenged me, that pushed me, that wasn't as easy as listening to Otis Redding, right? Thankfully, I discovered in 2016, by chance, in the middle of my music death, I didn't pay attention to music hardly at all between 2002 and 2018, but for some reason the album Big Baby showed up and I enjoyed it. And it filled that hole for me. And it was very kind of hip-hop. At the time, he was kind of a hip-hop artist. He was known as D.R.A.M back then, D.R.A.M, does real-ass music. Kind of a southern feel. I think he's from Virginia, and he did a song with Lil Yachty that was really famous, and that my kids loved, and I really ended up enjoying it and thinking it was really great. And it filled that R. Kelly shaped hole. To another extent, it filled the Outkast shaped hole as well, because Outkast did a great job of making R&B, but also hip hop and R&B that was in that realm that pushed me to my limits of acceptance. And then we have this album, Shelley fka D.R.A.M. And it seems to me this is fulfilling the promise. This is filling that R. Kelly shaped hole. This is helping me to truly enjoy a different kind of soul music that is not easy for me to love, but I end up loving this album to the point where it really may be my album of the year. Although, like every year, it's been a great year for good albums. We have yet to see if it's a good year for great albums. That'll determine that in December. I think the name change is very important. Going from D.R.A.M, going from somebody who had to get a lot of guest appearances by rap artists, now it's all singers and R&B. You wouldn't know this guy was a rap artist from listening to this album at all. He just sings in that great, ineffable voice. That voice that you can't really describe, you definitely can't imitate. Well, you can imitate it, but you can't replicate it, The great falsetto in the tradition of Smokey Robinson, Curtis Mayfield. I really think this fits right in there. And that personality that drew me to the album Big Baby, if you haven't seen it, the album cover is him with a poodle. It's very cute. He's still here on this album. You just really feel a warmth coming from him. And I think what's great about this is, speaking of avoiding the unpleasantness of artists like R. Kelly, consent is a major theme on this album. I mean, basically every love song is like, I want to get down with you, let's get dirty and greasy and all this stuff. If you would like to, I consent to this, and I think it shows the sort of myth that PC culture or not wanting to sexually abuse women in a systematic and persistent way across all cultures forever, always, that we can't actually not do that anymore and still have an album, still have music that is sexy, that gives you that same feeling, but just with the added element of consent. There's also a fair amount of ASMR on this album. I don't know if that's on purpose. He does these spoken word bits where he sounds like he's smoking, maybe a cigarette, maybe a blunt, I don't know. But you can hear his tongue, like while he's talking, he's a little too close to the microphone. But it's a nice thing. It helps to make you feel really close to him, because this whole album, you feel like you're going through something with him, even though the thematics don't appear to be particularly personal. I don't know much about his life. I don't know where he went. I mean, the album is 2016. I said I was going to be reviewing this album, and my son was like, didn't he fall off? I'm like, I don't know. If this is falling off, I hope every artist falls off. He actually says it's okay to like his old music. He actually says that. It's funny. It's almost like he's transitioning to a different kind of singer. He's trying to just get rid of that old identity and just become Shelley. And we now just have to call him Shelley, which I suppose is his real name. I don't know. But he says that this is the first of a new set of albums he's going to be releasing. In his words, he's finna flood the streets with love and grease. This theme of grease is going to pop up. So let me give you an example song, okay? Right up here. Click on this to listen to the song The Laydown, featuring H.E.R. Her? I don't know how you say her's name. I don't know anything about her. H.E.R., except that she won an Oscar, and she's great on this song. What I want you to hear when you're listening to this example track, okay, that's my homework for you. Listen to this song, then come back here. Really nice guitar work, kind of staccato guitar work, very smooth drums, kind of a sultry bass, and then the lyrics are sort of a goofy sex song. I prefer we go upstairs, right? Again, this terminology of consent is all the way throughout this album. I would like to lay down with you is the main theme of the song. California sheets to sleep on, to get your freak on, kind of the general thematics of sexuality that come across in a lot of this kind of R&B. But it just leads into this great bombastic chorus. And the vocal production on the whole record, on the whole album is just so impressive. Just the whole chorus of his voice, it's very catchy, very cool. You just have to listen to hear all the details of vocal production. Then her, H.E.R. comes on and like matches Shelley quite nicely. Shelley will do a sort of a woo-ah at the end of one of her lines. It makes for a really good duet. Then there's this goofy, awesome verse about bad vibrations from my phone. Can't put my heart on airplane mode. My services belong to you. The signal's strong, we set the mood. You know, it's great. It's great sort of very modern kind of dated lyrics, you know, like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, hello, my ragtime doll, send me your love by wire, you know, like in 100 years, people are gonna be like, what the hell is airplane mode? But in this case, it's really nice. And then we reach the highlight of the album, that thing I was talking about, that marriage of vocals and instrumentation. The whole thing is produced by Andrew Watt, who is another artist who I don't know enough about, but I know is very important. And he plays this guitar solo, and he's producing the track, and he's playing this guitar solo, and he's playing way up, he's playing high and low, and Shelley comes in, and her comes in, and their voices are just going everywhere, mixing together in this kind of weird orgy of sound. The thing it reminded me most of is a great underrated Jimi Hendrix song called Who Knows, where Buddy Miles, the drummer, is like singing along and playing the drums at the same time. Like you just get this feeling of just like, this is what voices and instruments can do in a sort of semi-improvised explosion. It is just awesome. Awesome. I'm so happy to have heard it. I'm so happy that I almost skipped over this album, actually, because I didn't recognize the name Shelley. But what a great thing. So I'm going to take you through the rest of the album. We'll get to that Daft Punk cover soon. The first track on the album is, weirdly, the worst track on the whole album, All Pride Aside. Kind of low-key, gentle song. It's a lot of it seems as though he's like been in therapy or something. There's some kind of, I don't know anything about him except he's like from Virginia. And my son says he's fallen off. But like, it's kind of like a slow jam about like enabling each other. And it's talking about the concept of being addicted to love, but it's not like addicted to love. It's like, it's a problem. And the female vocalist who does the duet with him, Summer Walker, she actually says like, how can you say you love me when you compare me to a drug? Which is true. If you compare someone to a drug, you can't love them. Because you can't love drugs. You can't. I know you might be sitting there thinking, I love drugs. You don't love drugs. You don't. There's a beautiful bridge. Since we not stopping ourselves, I'll keep playing you if you keep playing me. So it's this kind of interesting codependent relationship. Then we get to the track Exposure. Another thing that I think is necessary for an album of the year is lyrics like this. Let me touch your soul like I touch your skin. Let me love you inside out and outside in. Let me love you over and over again. Just what an amazingly awesome description of a physical and emotional love affair, right? Like it is sex. It is sex in music. You know, that's the thing that R&B does that other music can't do. Like other music doesn't feel like sex, but good R&B does. Put in the comments if you disagree. Is there other music that actually sounds and feels like sex other than this kind of R&B music that I'm talking about that makes me a little bit uncomfortable from time to time? This song is exactly in that mode, but it goes further by being emotional. It's not just like, I'm using you and you're my girl for the night and I gotta go. It's this whole concept of, you know, sexy consent and like understanding somebody in a vulnerable way, talking about knowing you outside in. The voice leads the whole time, the gentle drums behind. He even says at one point, there's no such thing as cool. He's really pining for real emotional intimacy in this love affair. I feel like I really relate to how Shelley is presenting his life here. I feel like he has a kind of maturity to his eroticism that is unexpected and wonderful. Great vocal range as well, and just the production all the way through is so good. The next track is Something About Us. And I heard it and I go, hello? Do you know that you're like ripping off Daft Punk? And then I looked at the song title and I was like, oh, this is actually just a cover. And it's a cover of the song Something About Us by Daft Punk. Not one of their best known songs. The voice, his voice is so good. It is absolutely better than the robots. It is better than the original voices. But it has that same kind of weirdness, because there's a weirdness to the original, especially the, I need you more than anything in my life. Shelley, much like D.R.A.M before him, has a kind of weirdness and a slight oddness. You know, maybe that's the influence from Outkast or I don't know what. But there's always like a little bit weird, a little bit not totally straight down the center of sort of like mainstream thinking and thought. And just the way that he sings, I need you more than anything in my life. It is not just a straight cover of the song because the voice does so much to it. Just having this real human voice, this amazingly complex, impossible to duplicate voice. Also, let's talk about something that I discovered in research. I looked up, I was like, well, was Daft Punk sampling anybody for Something About Us? Nothing popped off, you know, because it was on Discovery, which is mostly an album of covers. And I happened to find a comment on whosampled.com, one of my favorite websites on the internet, from someone named Roasted Peas, who said 3 years ago, Curtis Mayfield's Tripping Out influenced the bass track of Daft Punk's Something About Us. So if you've never done this, listen to Tripping Out by Curtis Mayfield. It is, okay, not exactly, right? They didn't owe, certainly as much as Blurred Lines is Marvin Gaye's song, this, Something About You, Something About Us, is just that much similar to the Curtis Mayfield song. And when I got that, and then I started listening to the Curtis Mayfield original, it all came together. And what a beautiful world we live in, you know, where we have an African-American soul singer, you know, from the South, who's covering these, you know, French elite bourgeois genius artists who are imitating African-American soul singer. I think Curtis Mayfield's from the South, maybe not, but still like this great transatlantic, transgenerational back and forth of music to just create this great soul thing. Because this is the thing. I don't care if Daft Punk are European. I don't care if they grew up in the fanciest part of all Paris. I don't care about that. They are as good soul musicians as have ever existed. Their soul and funk and disco music is so damn good. It defies all of those limiting factors of race, class, gender, etc. So to have the song come back and be done here in the place where the music was created, oh, it's just so good. It's just so great. It is so good. I'm so happy to have discovered it. Is that good music reviewing? Just saying that it's good? It's good. That's my review. This has the first spoken outro where he gets way too close to the microphone and talks about isn't love beautiful? And it leads into the next song, Beautiful, which is mostly harp and piano and bass. This is the kind of song where a 22-year-old me would be like, bro, this is too cheesy. I don't mind soul when it's like good with like good instruments, but like, you know, but now I just appreciate it. And I was listening to it, and I was listening to it on my phone. This is the thing, I live with music. Like when I review music, I don't just like sit in my room, my headphones on, a notebook. I live with it. I went to the gym listening to this album. I drove my daughter to school listening to this album. I listened to it on the hi-fi, through Bluetooth. I listened to it on my computer. I listened to it on my phone, everywhere. So I'm leaving my room after doing some grading. I was grading some exams, and I was listening to this album, and I was listening to this song, and my wife was just over there in front of this. We have a screen door. It's like a big clear screen door, and she was looking out at the lavender that we planted a couple years ago, and she's having a nice moment looking at our beautiful yard, you know, because lavender is great. And I see her, and like I'm listening to this song about how much he's in love with this woman and how beautiful she is. And you're as beautiful as the flowers when they start to bloom, and the stars and the moon and all this. And I just kind of come up behind her and I like hug her, and I'm listening to the music, and we're kind of swaying back and forth. And like the music is just a perfect accompaniment to this kind of sweet memory, you know? And then some guy was walking by walking his dog. If you're a fan of the show, you know about Cop Dog. It was Cop Dog. Boo. And I was like, we better stop this because like it felt too pornographic. We were just like hugging and listening to this music. But again, the music truly is so sexy that it's hard to like not feel like you're doing something wrong sometimes when you're listening to it. And it's this really nice song, and it's this nice moment, and it's the kind of thing that this kind of soul music can create that other music cannot. The eroticism of modern R&B, you know, sort of post 1975 soul, it can't be recreated. And it created a nice memory, and it's the kind of memory that for the rest of the album will seem to haunt Shelley. So next is the Laydown, the track I already discussed, and then we get to 94 Acura Vigor, which is a kind of car, interesting kind of old car to mention, and it's a great breakup song. It reminds me a lot of Walk On By. I mean, the Burt Bacharach song, because he wrote it. Bacharach. The Burt Bacharach song. I say it like I'm from Western New York. Burt Bacharach. But you know, I think of it as a Isaac Hayes song. You know, the whole idea of like, oh, if you see me, just ignore me, and if you see me and I'm single because of you. But it's a great sad breakup song, one of a couple on here. It's weird because it's a duet with Erykah Badu, but she doesn't do that much. She kind of repeats the same verse that he has, and then has another thing. But still, it's quite nice the way it works together. Then we get to Married Woman. True fact about me, I really highly dislike songs, movies, TV shows about infidelity. It really bums me out. I don't like it. I don't like celebrating it. I don't like discussing it. So it was something of a feat that I find this song as enjoyable as I do. Probably because it is a very, very mournful song. It's like this doubled voice that's going down with a guitar, with a nice guitar underneath, and it feels kind of like a dirge. And just this line, consummating with a married woman. It's barely a song. And then it has another kind of outro where it talks about, like, you know, have you ever done this? I'm not a judge and jury, you know. And then it leads on to the sort of most overtly erotic song, Cooking with Grease. And this is a great track. I can't tell if this is like the person who's being cheated on or the person who's cheating or if it's just a love affair. But I didn't know which way the song was going to go. It starts off with this voice and then the bass drum. It's a funny thing because if the bass drum decided to go just on the ones, 2, 3, 4, 1, it would have worked just fine. But instead it ended up kind of shuffling on the Indiana 3 4, so it ended up being like kind of a shuffle song, and it makes it upbeat and almost halftime at points. And it's just a great song that moves along. One of my favorite lyrics on the album, the way I give good lovin' makes me proud of myself. And then there's these little string notes that go doodle-doo. And I just like it, you know, like this feels really honest, you know. The way I give good lovin' makes me proud of myself. And if you give good lovin', you do feel proud. You know, this is a real human experience. You know, like having that feeling is a great feeling. And he's able to put it there. Really catchy, really good production. The next track is Remedies. It's maybe the most accessible, maybe the catchiest chorus. It's almost gospel at times, like there's an organ there. And it's all about this remembering the ex. You know, like remembering and like dreaming about her. A great verse about going on a date with someone who's very beautiful, but like being so distracted, like that you can't even pay attention to it. She doesn't even matter. Just his voice just becomes like a complete wall. It's just really great. And then it ends with that explanation that he'll be releasing more music with Grease. It's like, I can't quite explain what he means by Grease, but I know what he means. You know? Ends with the track Rich and Famous. Hey, how about a song from someone talking about how stupid it is to care about watches? he doesn't just talk about how stupid it is to care about watches. He really talks about like one watch in great detail, and about the stupidity and about the emptiness of fame and money. But he doesn't do it in a preachy way. He doesn't do it in a sort of, I am better than you now. It's just sort of talking about that emptiness. And this song is cool because it's kind of like a early 80s funk groove, kind of like Zapp and Roger or whatever. It even reminds me of Daft Punk with the vocoder sound. And the whole song feeds into a sense I have on this album of almost like a salvation narrative. And it's not so much that he's finding Jesus, but he's like finding love, and maybe even love of himself. I guess that's what people find when they find Jesus. At least that's what they think they find. Anyway, it's a kind of a nice way to end this whole album that like sort of expands it and makes it clear that there is a sort of social message here, but it's not a very tangible political message. It's just about the power of love. The whole album is about love and relationships and loving yourself and loving other people with respect and with passion. So there you go. There's my review of Shelley fka D.R.A.M. Absolutely love this record. Give it a shot. Push through, I would say. If you don't initially like it, push through. And if you're on my Patreon, you're gonna see me finally talk about that Reese's Puffs cereal with Lil Yachty. So if you want to join my Patreon, patreon.com/Professor Sky, to hear me talk about that cereal box, because I have a lot of thoughts about that box. Okay, well, for next time, until next time, for every single member of the 1986 New York Mets, there's the camera.